The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. Once again, this is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor, your host, and we are continuing the conversation with Mike Helms, who's a firearms historian, published author, court-recognized expert witness. We were talking about his keynote speaking, and the conversation continues now. I do have I have a suggestion for you.
Sure.
You may or may not like the suggestion, but I could just see you booking yourself as a speaker on a cruise ship in exchange for passage, and you get a free vacation. I'm being serious. I've been trying to do that. I can't quite break in, but for you, I think that would be like wonderful. You take your family, you get a cabin, you get run of the ship, and you teach for like 4 30-minute sessions for 7 days.
I'm in. Yeah.
That's okay. Good. I could totally see myself. I just got back from a cruise over Thanksgiving, and I could just see myself be gravitating towards one of your classes, like immediately. And I saw people on the cruise ship. They had, Ruger and Smith & Wesson and other firearms related stuff. I typically don't advertise that outside of my classes.
Sure.
That's just my own personal way that I go about things. I'm really glad you segued into your expert witness work. I've also done a couple cases for expert witness. How do people find you? How do attorneys find you?
That's a great question. I think generally they find me through my website and probably mostly just through word of mouth.
Okay.
The firearms historian field is fairly small. I try not to disparage everybody. I think everybody has something to offer.
Right.
But there's not a lot of degreed historians that have the academic and the publishing credentials and the real world experience, handling and working with firearms and even doing some competitive shooting and so on and so forth. And I don't hold myself out as a world champion marksman, but I consider myself pretty competent and well-rounded. And I think for any attorney to put me in court, that's a well-rounded set of credentials that make it easy for me to be taken seriously by both sides. But I think a lot of it just comes from word of mouth from people. It's a small community. A lot of people know me, and it seems like attorneys are starting to get to know me now, and that side of the business is picking up a little bit, which is great, and I enjoy that. But like I say, it's a small group of people who have the academic background and what I would call sort of the real life gun handling skills, who can talk about that from both sides.
Off air, you said that you do very limited sales consulting. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Sure. So it seems to be, unfortunately, a little more common than I would like for it to be, that people inherit a gun collection from a family member that's passed away, and people don't know what to do with it. So I'm a little bit careful. I don't dabble too much in the formal appraisal space because I'm not a licensed appraiser. But with estates, I will, on a selective basis, help people. Really, it's just help connect sellers with buyers, whether that means referring somebody to a particular dealer that I know specializes in a particular firearm, or whether that's taking the collection myself and taking it to a show or something like that and selling it. I will do that on a limited basis. I want to be a little bit careful that I'm not spending every weekend of my life going from show to show, just trying to sell stuff. This can swell and kind of consume your entire life if you let it. And I try to keep better work-life balance than that. But there are some times where people will legitimately have something to sell, and it's something where I think I can add some value as a historian, as an expert in this space. And I will take those pieces and help connect them with a buyer that will appreciate that sort of firearm, and hopefully do with it what families want to see done with it. I think most people, when they inherit a collection like that, they want it to go to somebody that will appreciate it, that will enjoy it and care for it, and make sure that it goes responsibly to the next generation. And I try to do that.
Terrific. I do a little bit of that as well. So my viewpoint on historic firearms or even non-historic firearms when it comes to estates is a owner or somebody who inherited a firearm or a spouse can take the gun to a police department and maybe get 50 or $100 for it as a trade-in. And a lot of these guns are worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. So my view is if that's the case, they should probably get the value for the firearm as opposed to a $50 voucher to Starbucks or wherever they happen to be giving out at the moment. So that's my viewpoint. If anyone ever needs a quick lookup, I do have the Bible. My website, or the way to get a hold of me, is marcusmelnick.com, which is my electronic business card. And Mike's website is mikehelms.org. That is MikeHelms.org. So I'm looking at your website and on your About page, and you're a well-respected published author. Can you tell everyone about your book?
Sure. My first book I wrote in 2021 was a sort of funny, sort of sad story around this. I had just acquired serial number 5, Smith & Wesson at that point, and I had a good and growing collection of Smith & Wesson Model 1s. And for the Smith & Wesson Collectors Association Symposium that fall, I decided I was going to put together a little book called 15 Smith & Wessons or something like that. And this was going to be a little booklet that I would sell at the symposium that fall. So I put the booklet together and was pretty proud of it and got 100 copies printed, which I thought would be enough. And 2 weeks before the symposium, I actually had a heart attack. And obviously, I survived it. I had 2 heart stents put in, and I'm actually doing very well now.
Good.
But for obvious reasons, my cardiologist would not let me go to the symposium. That was actually the worst part of the heart attack. And I ended up with 100 copies of this book. So I've been selling them off. I've got maybe 5 or 10 copies left now. But that was my first book. And that actually is that and my thesis that I defended in 2017 are kind of the foundation for my full-length book that I'm writing right now, which is a very exhaustive look at the Smith & Wesson Model 1 and a discussion about the founding of the company, how Smith & Wesson came to be, why it came to be, why it was such an important American enterprise, and very foundational for the modern firearms industry. So that's the book I'm working on right now. And I still have, I think maybe 10 or so copies of the other book about the 15 Model 1s. And I think there's even a link to it on my website. But that's what I've got going on the book publishing world. The other thing I would mention is that the standard catalog of Smith & Wesson, the 5th edition, is coming out, I believe, this spring or this summer of 2024. And I actually contributed heavily to the Smith & Wesson Model 1 section of that. So I'm kind of going to be proud to see that in print and looking forward to that.
Wait a minute. Didn't we see you on Swamp People?
You did.
Can you tell everyone about that?
Oh, that was such a fun project. Back in the summer of 2022, I was in a local gun store, and this fella came in, and he was looking around the store. He didn't look like, I'd say this in air quotes, he didn't look like he was from around here. And long story short, it turned out that he was the senior producer of the Swamp People television show, and he was looking for a firearms historian. And everybody in the store got very quiet, and they all turned and looked at me. We had a couple conversations about my research and my work and what I do, and he really wanted to bring me on the show for a season. So we did a couple of episodes. I was kind of paired up with Black Rambo, who's quite a character, actually a very nice guy. I really enjoyed working with him. And we did a couple little spots about Black Rambo finding some guns out in southern Louisiana and then bringing them to me. And we did a little bit of history education with it. And it was just a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. They were a great team to work with. And it definitely didn't hurt me at all. That was good exposure.
So on Mike's website, there is a list of, I would call it a mini CV, And that's listed there, as well as some of your keynotes, your books, your guest lecturer at Auburn, at North Carolina State. And I'm actually going to look up some of these older articles, like you did one on mass shootings for Time Magazine, American Heritage Magazine. So I'm going to be looking that up, and people can certainly go to the website, Mike Helms, HELMS.org, and look under the About and full biography to see some of the backgrounds. How far are you from Wake Forest University?
I am a good distance from Wake Forest University, and I have a feeling I know why you're asking.
Yes, that's exactly why I'm asking. I'm going to ask you about their Sociology of Guns class, which I just heard they may be doing an online version of.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. David Umani is a fantastic guy. Awesome. He and I have had a number of conversations, sidebar conversations. I have nothing but respect for the research that he's doing and the teaching that he's doing. And if there's any students in that class who are out there, tell David that you need a firearms historian to come and do a guest lecture. I would absolutely, I'm itching to get out there and attend one of his classes and maybe even get the chance to speak. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm going to mention that to him. I don't know him very well. We connected over. He started, or he's involved in an organization called Liberal Gun Owners.
Yes.
And I joined it. And very interestingly enough, I'm in conservative gun groups as well, because I'm interested in the firearm. I'm not interested in the politics surrounding the firearm. I'm interested in the machinery, how to use it, how to defend yourself. And I'm finding that the conservative groups have a bunch of unrelated rhetoric. Unrelated. Yes. Some of it's humorous, and I get that. There's a place for that. But the Facebook group for the liberal gun owners is specific to firearms. You go on and you don't hear anyone complaining about Trump or Biden or what law was passed. You get the, hey, look, this is a new firearm. What are some training techniques? And that's why I absolutely love the group. And it's only $10 for the year. There's other groups local to me who spew out legal inaccuracies. I'll just put it that way. That's the nicest way I can say that. And it's frustrating to me because people, including gun store employees, follow the rhetoric and then they don't know what the laws are. And I just experienced that this week. As you know, I'm in Illinois, and there's a new law that came out that said you can no longer do a person-to-person transfer. You have to take a firearm to a gun store. And so I was at one of the gun stores I frequent, and he says, "No, yeah, you have to bring it to us, and we'll charge $75." And I said, "Wait a minute, the law says $25." And he said, "Well, we charge $25 for the transfer and $50 for the paperwork." And I'm like, "Okay, first of all, that's that." And I said, "Can you still do a face-to-face transfer?" "Oh no, you can't do it." And the way that the law was written, it's an option to take it to a federal firearms licensee, not a requirement. So right. I just happened to, tomorrow he's picking it up because we have a waiting period in Illinois, but I just offloaded a firearm, person-to-person transfer, just like the old way, and we don't have to go to a gun store. Now, the buyer does have to turn in the receipt to a gun store, so it's documented somewhere, but it's not a government registration or anything like that.
Right.
So
yeah, there's a lot of bad legal advice out there.
Oh my God! Yes, a lot of internet attorneys, Monday morning quarterback attorneys, and their opinions are valid. I get it. Everyone has a perspective, but when you're representing an organization and the organization is spewing inaccuracies and people are looking to get information on it, then it becomes problematic because then people don't know the law. And that's including the gun stores, and that's including law enforcement, because there's just so many laws out there. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and thank you very much for taking the time, Michael, to share your expertise and what you do. What final thoughts can you offer to my listeners, our listeners, or what ideas would you like to share that maybe I didn't ask about?
The most common question I get asked as a firearms historian is, I inherited this old gun, or I found this old gun in the attic. And something I always tell people is knowledge is power. there's a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of online forums that have a lot of idiots, but they also have a lot of really smart people who are more than willing to share their time. So what I always tell people is be really educated about what you have before you make a decision, whether you're going to sell it or restore it or pass it down in the family or whatever. Get that knowledge. Knowledge is power. It's out there. Just ask for it. You have an old firearm that you're curious about and you don't know where to go, email me. My email address is on my website, and I'll, like I say, I don't know everything, but I probably know the people who do know everything about whatever you've got. So get the knowledge and put it to good use, because it'll only help you in this space.
Got two things to say based on what you just said. I thought we were going to conclude, but Marcus has a big mouth. Number one, since I'm a safety guy, I'm completely safety conscious. I would recommend that if a listener who's not a firearms person, and it's okay if they're not a firearms person, if they find a gun in the attic, like a handgun, this is what I tell the people who I work with. Put it in a Tupperware container, tape it closed until you can get a gun person to make sure it is not loaded. So
Great advice.
That's number one. And that way it's taped shut. You really got to make an effort to get to it. The second thing I wanted to add, a follow-up question, is you said whether the person wants to sell it, dispose of it, or restore it. And if you can educate me, I'd appreciate it. I was always told that if you're restoring a gun, an older gun, it loses value. Is there truth to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. So the topic of restoration gets into... It dips a little bit into what I would call religious debate, because there are legitimately a couple of different schools of thought about this. Here's my take on it. Most guns, I would say 99% of guns, are worth the most exactly as they are right now, with no restoration. In a lot of cases, not even a heavy cleaning. And when we talk about cleaning, I want to sort of differentiate between, removing soot or leading from the barrel. That sort of cleaning is generally fine. But when we talk about just like a light buffing or polishing, we're really at that point moving more into the restoration space. And almost all guns, almost all the time, are worth more if they're just left as they are right now. And there's a very simple reason for that, which is, as the gun sits right now, it has most, or hopefully some or most, or maybe all of its original finish, and it will only ever have the original finish on it once. Once that's been stripped away, once that's been removed and recovered, replated, refinished, whatever, it's not factory original. And the direction I see a lot of the collecting circles moving in is towards what we would call preservation class, which means even if the gun's pretty beaten up, that is an authentic representation of that gun's history, and we want to preserve that. We want to keep it exactly as it is. When we restore it, we're actually destroying a lot of the gun's history. We're taking that wear and tear off of it, whether it was a duty arm or whether it was used by a notorious criminal or whatever. Those nicks and scratches and dents and whatever else are a part of the gun's history. And when we strip that away, they're irreversibly gone forever. I think there are some limited cases where restoration is appropriate when you've got a particularly valuable firearm that was really, really mishandled or mistreated and it's really damaged. I think sometimes it can be appropriate to do a restoration at that point. Certainly if it's a historically significant gun and we're trying to just preserve it and make sure it doesn't degrade and continue to, say, rust over time, obviously it's probably appropriate to take some steps to stop it from further disintegrating. But I think those cases are probably pretty few and far between. And I think in the vast majority of cases, it's really best to just leave it as it is, give it a good cleaning, give it a good oiling, and leave it at that. And that's the advice I give to people, like I say, probably 99% of the time.
I think I violated your advice.
Well, here's the other side of it. A lot of people enjoy a firearm more when it's been polished, reblued, re-nickel plated, whatever, and that's fine too. There's the monetary worth of the gun, and there's the enjoyment that you get out of it,
right.
And what you do to it, whether it's polishing or buffing or refinishing or whatever, that also becomes a part of the gun's history. And there's actually a lot of cases, and I've even got a few guns in my collection where people did that, and that's actually part of the gun's history now, and I value that. So That's like I say, that's a religious debate in the collecting community, and you'll get strong opinions on both sides of that fence.
So I bought a foreign military surplus rifle from the 50s. This is during the pandemic because you couldn't do anything. So
Sure.
I actually used the bayonet on it. You know how
Yeah.
I did?
How'd you do that?
I stuck the bayonet in the ground and I poured hot water over it to get rid of the cosmoline grease. But it was used.
Yes.
I used it. Okay, so obviously I'm being funny. But I restored it as a project. It's not worth anything. I mean, it wasn't worth anything to begin with. But for me, I restored the stock of it. The mechanicals didn't need anything other than like a brush go through it. There's no restoration of any metals, but the wood stock looks great. I kept all the original dinks and scratches and polyurethaned it so it would be preserved. So that's kind of what I did with. That was more preservation than restoration, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And I think most collectors, I've done that before, and it's a lot of fun. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it, and it was for me, it was a rifle also, and it was something where, it wasn't worth anything to begin with, and it gave me a lot of enjoyment, and that's a perfectly legitimate reason to do it.
Beautiful.
Perfectly legitimate reason to do it.
Beautiful. Well, Michael, thank you once again for staying on the line with me and letting me do my follow-up questions. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for Mike, his website, once again, is Mike, M-I-K-E, Helms, HELMS.org.
Thanks so much, Marcus.
In segueing to another topic, it was kind of funny. When I worked in public safety and roll call, when there would be a string of burglaries, we had one lieutenant who would say, "'Tis the season," and usually the season for a lot of burglaries is around the holidays when people go out and they're gone for several hours, either to dinner or to a party. And that's really a hot burglary season, which we've just passed. Although we would get burglaries in June, and the same lieutenant would say, "'Tis the season," but even though it wasn't the season. So the question that I'm going to pose and then answer is, where do burglars go in your house? Well, they're looking for a quick score, so a couple places that they're going to look in are entryway, drawers, and cabinets. Why the entryway? Well, they're close to the exit and they can make a quick getaway. They're also going to go into bedroom closets. They're looking for a cash box. They're looking for jewelry. Okay? What should you do? Well, you can put it in boxes and label the boxes with something that's unappealing to a burglar, like old newspapers, family photos, magazine subscriptions, or whatever you would have in your closet, toy models, Legos, whatever you'd have in your closet that would not be valuable to a burglar. That's what you should label your boxes in. Dresser drawers. Typically, the top dresser drawer has valuables in it. They'll also move the mattress, so when people come home from a night out, a day out, a lot of time their house is tossed, and I make air quotes when I say tossed, or ransacked. They're moving the mattress to see if there's any cash under the mattress. Also, if you have a portable safe that's not secured or not super heavy, they may take it and try to open it elsewhere. They're also going to be looking in your medicine cabinets. They're looking for painkillers. They're looking for Oxycontin and Norco and all sorts of things that they could sell on the black market. Another place they look is the freezer. And I'm going to make a little joke here. They're looking for cold, hard cash. And the freezer is where a lot of people store their money because they think that a burglar's not going to check. Well, if you store your money in the freezer, it's a great idea to keep your lean cuisine box, your ice cream bar box, your popsicle box, or whatever other frozen stuff you might have, and put it in that. Typically, a burglar is not going to be looking through all of your frozen foods for money or jewelry, so that's a good idea. Also, office drawers. They're looking for data. They're looking for your social security numbers. They're looking for dates of birth. They want to steal identities. So I did recently read in an article that putting incorrect labels on your file folders is a good idea. Now, for me, that would be completely confusing. How about get a lock for your file cabinet? It's probably a little bit easier than mislabeling everything, having a decoder ring, and trying to actually figure out what's in what file. Sometimes people come home and their vases are broken, and their vases have nothing more than a plant in them. But sometimes people hide money in vases. So a victim may come home and see that their thing is shattered or their valuables are shattered because the burglars are looking for money. Kitchen storage, like the old tea kettle, like a cookie jar. A lot of times people keep money in a cookie jar. And growing up, we used to say, who stole the cookies from the cookie jar? And I used to always say, I did, and boy, were they good. Liquor cabinets, suitcases. A lot of times people will store valuables in suitcases. Burglars are also looking behind picture frames. They're looking in shoe boxes, underwear drawers, and they're also going to be looking in your garage. Now, you might not have cash or jewelry in your garage, but you got tools, you got bikes, you got electric scooters, all sorts of things that they can hawk and get money for. Another thing is electrical boxes, fuse boxes. Sometimes people will hide cash in there. So be creative with wherever you're hiding your valuables or locking up your valuables, because I certainly don't want you to be victimized, and you don't want you to be victimized. So please tune in next week for another exciting episode. Thank you for listening. We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.